everyone, and welcome back to the Museum Show and Tell Show. My name is Nicole, and I am the curator of the Penetanguishene Museum, and I'm here with Genevieve from the Huronia Museum. And today is our last episode of the season. We're going to take a break for the summer, so we're going to hopefully go out with a big bang, and you're going to really enjoy this episode. And but Genevieve, you gave us a really great topic because it was pretty wide. You just used the month June. So anything that, reminds you of June or is in June or anything like that. So I'm curious to see, what do you have for us today?
Okay, so I decided to talk about this day in history in Huronia. And the earliest thing I could find took place in 1849. A fella by the name of James Boynton, for £50, purchased 100 acres of property in Medonti. He purchased lot 9, concession 3. And I discovered that James Boynton had been born in 1796 in England, and he immigrated to Canada, although I'm not sure of the date. Andrew Hunter records that he was also living on the second concession in Medonti Township. And I guess he had interviewed him, and he records that he had said, "I had a log shanty without floor or window. The door was so low, I had to creep in on all fours." And that, since there was no mill nearby, the first crop of wheat that Mr. Boynton grew, he had to hand grind with 2 stones. So he didn't even have a proper grinding, like hand mill. And they managed to make a kind of coarse bread with that. So it was a very, probably a very rude introduction to Canada. The next thing we have, June 28th, 1902, is a photograph.
Oh, wow.
Of a very kind of rude building. It was apparently at some point just before June 28th, the Waldy store in Victoria Harbour burnt down. So this is the temporary photograph. No, it's a real photograph. It's the temporary store. And written on the side, on this sign, is Victoria Mercantile Company Limited. I'm not entirely sure how long it took to rebuild the old store, but I do have photographs of the store after that date, after 1902, when it was moved temporarily. Then again, in 1910, the town of Midland passed a bylaw, number 737. Apparently the taxes, there were a lot of taxes for the year 1909 that were outstanding. So the town gave Thomas Bell, who was the tax collector, an extra 2 weeks to collect the outstanding taxes. Apparently they had to write bylaws for that sort of thing. Now we jump to 1928, when the Midland Chamber of Commerce was formed. So this is like an article of incorporation for the Midland Chamber of Commerce, with signatures of a number of the, we've got N.K. Wagg, who owned the laundry. We've got W.E. Preston, who owned the shop, which is the Playfair building, or the bowling alley. I.K. Brown. A. Berry, he owned the funeral parlor. Edwards, Hartman, Bug, some of these are illegible, and Burke, Captain E.F. Burke, and Frank Bray, who owned the planing mill. So there's a lot of names that are really well-known, still well-known in the community today. We also have in 1930, June 28th, 1930, this ship here, the Bluefin, which is a Georgian Bay fishing tug. It was launched at the Midland Shipbuilding Company. I dropped one photograph. This little photograph here
upside down.
It's upside down. This is much better.
Aww.
This is the wedding of Charles Walber Ellery and Louise Van Corngut Ramsey Ellery. That was in some point, this was in 1940, and it was at an unidentified church in Port McNicoll. For any of you who went to school either in Midland or Port McNicoll, you might know the Louise's sister, Jean Ramsey. She was a teacher and a longtime teacher. Anyway, that's her sister. And this is in 1960. Edward Jardine graduated from the 6th Street School. Congratulations, Edward. And last but not least, in June 28th, 1965, the news Patriot was launched. I'm not sure how long this newspaper ran. We only have, I think, 2 years worth, 1965 and 1966. So if any of you are aware of the news Patriot, you could let me know how long that newspaper was distributed. It was a free newspaper. It was distributed apparently in Midland and Penetanguishene, it notes. I'm not sure how much long or whether it was widely distributed throughout Tiny and Tay. And it is predominantly filled with newspaper advertisements. There's actually very, very little news of the area. So those are a few of the things that happened in on June 28th in North Simcoe.
Oh, that is
I mean, there were lots of others that I found, to be honest, but they weren't entirely interesting. Some of them had to do with legal documents. You know, judgments were issued on that date, and they were very complicated and boring. So there you go.
That is such a clever way to use that that theme. But I mean, you were the one that came up with the theme, so I'm sure you thought about that. That's great, because I mean, that's one thing about our collections management systems is all you need to punch in is the date, June 28th, right, and all you get is searches. So
that's right.
That's great. That's neat. Well, I went a little different way. I was just thinking, okay, so June, what do I think of June? It's the end of June. I'm thinking this is like the beginning to me officially of summer vacation in the area. And so I thought, you know, we did have quite a bit of hotels around here. And I know I've talked about the Penetanguishene Hotel, but there's another hotel that was probably for Midland and Penetanguishene, a big one, and that would be the Penetanguishene Hotel. So the Penetanguishene Hotel was on an island. It's close to Beausoleil Island, about, I don't know, 12 miles from Penetanguishene. This is a really neat little pamphlet for that hotel. Penetanguishene was known to mean where the blueberries grow. And an interesting connection to Penetanguishene with Penetanguishene is the very first person to buy the island in 1885 was William Keating from Penetanguishene. And then he sold it to a man out of New York in 1897. And then that gentleman started to build the big manor house there. So it was just supposed to be his home. And then in 1901, he sold it to Colonel Cotley. And he was from Philadelphia, I believe. And he started to build like more of a bigger home there, and a bit of a complex. And he bought it for $5,000 back in 1901, that island. And I think William Keating had bought it from the Crown for about $300 in 1885.
Oh,
I think like prices go up for now. Think about it, back in 1901. And so he started building this big home and started inviting all of his friends to come up and building different little outbuildings around. And then in 1908, he passed away, and his niece and nephew took over. They owned it, and they actually decided to open it up as a summer resort because it was so big. The home was so big. There were so many of these other small buildings, and it was very well known. And we have a picture kind of here of the resort. And And yeah, this little thing here just really boasts about what it had on it. It had two tennis courts. It had a dance hall. So every weekend they would have dances there. This was just a view from the main house, looking at all the other houses on, you know, their outbuildings. Here were the tennis courts they had. And it was a really great place to just unwind. A lot of people would come to Penetanguishene on our train. They came from Allendale. They got on maybe the city of Dover, and the first stop they would stop at probably would be Penetanguishene. And we actually have, although we've had that pamphlet there, we also have a lot of pictures that were taken from one of our fonts, because this woman here, her name is Violet Pollard, and she was a housekeeper when it was the Penetanguishene Hotel, and she was there around the late 1918, around there, 1917, 18 to 1920s. And she actually is also mentioned in this book, Up the Shore, which was written by Juanita Rourke, which talks about Penetanguishene. But these pictures here are from her collection as well. And that was around World War I was like the heyday of this particular resort, because it opened up really in 1908. And then if you see this lovely picture from the island looking out. And yeah, so that was the heyday time period for here. And Vanessa had talked about Orville Wright, and here's another picture of Penetanguishene. Orville Wright, who was, you know, the Wright brothers that helped with the first flight at Kitty Hawk. He stayed up in Georgian Bay from around 1917 to the 1940s. He had his own island, but he used to come over for dinners at Penetanguishene all the time, and she talked about that. And here's some lovely photos of some young kids just swimming off the bay. And I've got so many here, but that's the one great thing. Here's the famous tennis courts on the island.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
And of course, here's inside. This is what their the room is for where they would eat. And this is all from Violet Pollard's collection. And that's one great thing about fonts, right? When you have somebody that has all these different pictures from this moment in time. Of course, fishing was a huge part. We did see an advertisement about how you could cure your hay fever on the Penetanguishene. And I'm thinking it's probably true, because it's all rock.
That's right.
All of the lumbermen actually in before William Keating purchased in 1885, the lumbermen had already cleared all of the trees off the island. So it was basically just rock. Here is a postcard, and it's actually written to Dear Violet, and it's just talking about loving their time up on Penetanguishene.
Nice.
And how they love the fishing. And it's interesting that that's a postcard. That's what it says in the back, and here's the writing. What else we got here? Another family portrait. I just love seeing, even though it's unfortunate we don't know who a lot of these people are, it's just, you know, you think about like the pastime that we have here in Ontario. For a lot of us, it is just enjoying by the beach, fishing, enjoying the water. And this goes back so far back to, you know, really, well, not that far back, but still, it's just really neat how this does seem to be quite the tradition. Here's someone dressed very fancy. I'm sure they had some really
Ooh.
nice things at the ballroom at Penetanguishene. And then here's a nice old sailboat, and I've got more sailboats, and it's just interesting. I know if you take the we had the Legacy now here in Penetanguishene, the cruise boat, and they always go by and talk about, because right now there's nothing on Penetanguishene, and this particular hotel was, the peak was around World War I. The Depression hit it really hard, like it did for all the business stuff in this area, and especially tourism. If you don't have a job, you're not going to go on these lovely family vacations. And so by 1936, it did close down. And then in the 1940s, it became a naval, what was it? It was a naval training place. I've written this down somewhere. But that's what this book was really about, is because they were there when it was sort of a training field there for the Navy and the military. After in 1943 is when it started, and they were there for about 14 years. So if you ever see this book anywhere, it was I just read a couple chapters, but it was very, very interesting to read. It was the largest sea cadet camp in Canada. That's how it started, and then it was a training.
Oh, okay. Princess Alice?
Yes.
Okay.
Princess
Okay.
Alice. Yes. I know, I was blanking on that. I just think of it as this really cool resort, and that's what it was as well. So
I think her daughter, Bonnie wrote a book about Princess Alice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Juanita, and then and I think she also
I was looking for
re-edited
another book because I thought we had Bonnie Rourke's book too, and I came across this book, but it was just quite interesting because this is from the mother, because Bonnie was like a baby basically when they moved there and lived there for 14 years on that island. And so
fantastic.
In our little library, have it here at the museum if anybody wants to come and take a look at it. But that was just lots. There's more pictures in there, but it just gives you an idea of the kind of sort of treasures sometimes we get from people. And this was all donated by Violet Pollard's niece. She had it all in her collection. So
wonderful.
So that's my story. A little different than yours, but still,
very much so. It's funny, some of the postcards that we have from the Penetanguishene, they always note that it's not far from near Penetanguishene. It's not Midland, which I think technically it is closer, but it's always interesting that Penetanguishene is noted, probably because the train would go directly up to Penetang rather than, but not to Midland. So
I think that's probably what it is, because you're right, it is technically closer to Penetanguishene, but it really is about that train, and which direction the train came from, because the train from Penetanguishene came from Allendale, which came straight from Toronto. And they used to call it the summer flyer because they would just have like 2 or 3 a day would be coming up in the summertime from Toronto and dropping it off, and then they would get on one of the boats to go out to the islands. And the trains, and of course the train station was right at the water, right, at the where we have the town dock now. So it was just very convenient as well. And so Midland, where did their train station came more from Aurelia, correct?
From the east, yeah.
And then from Aurelia, did it come from Toronto, or where did it come? It probably came from
Port Hope, Lindsay area. Yeah, I think you could probably join up with a train that had originally come, one of the lines that was going east from Toronto, and then up. But it's all has to do with the Midland Railway way back in, I think it was 1878. So,
and ours was, I think, 1879. So we were same time.
And it's interesting that there was never any rail joining Midland and Penetang. It was always two separate I mean, obviously has to do with the companies themselves and the competing railways, but it was such a short jaunt and there was nothing, never any.
I always kind of figured there always seems to be this, like, the towns, and I think it's different now, the towns are so close. But yeah, it just feel like there was this great divide between the two of them. And you think, well, if they didn't have a train that connected them, that's probably part of the reason, if it wasn't that easy, to get between those two, whereas our train connected to more like Perkinsfield and then on to like Elmvale and then over to Barrie. So, there seemed to be more connections with Perkinsfield, which when you think about it, is further away. But maybe it had to do with it because of the train system. But it is just always so funny to think of, like, how many trains were coming up here at that time, and they were just full of tourists to drop off, and what that would have been like down at the town dock.
Exciting. Yeah. What an adventure.
Yes. So that is my artifact for today, and I guess we will not come up with a theme for the fall.
I guess not.
I think we'll think about it, and you'll have to join us again, and we'll surprise you all. We'll talk before then and figure out what our theme is for the fall. But we hope everyone really enjoyed this series that we've had. We've been doing it for well over a year and a half, maybe a year and 8 months or something like that. It's been a while. We really enjoyed it, and we hope to see everyone again soon. So bye.
Bye. Have a great summer.
Yes.